Hey there, riddle for you. What do you get when anti-constitutionalists want abortion to be constitutional, even though it's anti-constitutional? Insanity. You get insanity. Welcome to Headlines with the Pastors. We discuss news and culture from a Christ-centered worldview. Thank you for joining us today. Hope you are well. Pray that you are well. For those on YouTube, let us know in the comments section below what conversations you've been having about the recent SCOTUS ruling, Supreme Court of the United States ruling, overturning Roe v. Wade. What have your discussions, debates, and screaming matches been all about? Tell us that in the comment section. We would be more than happy to read those and comment back with you. David, how you doing?
I'm great. It's summer. I really thought things would slow down, but it seems like they've only sped up. But it's funny because I think as people are always looking for like vacation, and we're looking for like the time when things slow down. And the longer you live, I think you just realize that never actually happens. There's always something to do, right? There's always more to life. I don't know. There's never a time where you just get to like not,
Yeah, I was looking. It's so funny doing a little bit of show prep and watching my children play outside, doing chalking and stuff like that, and telling that yes, now is time to go to bed, and they're all upset because they have many things that they need to accomplish today. And I'm thinking, I wish I didn't have anything to accomplish today.
Right.
So yes, there's always something to do, and it begins in childhood. And oh, how naive they are.
Right. That's the thing.
On my side of things,
their problems are smaller. I mean, kids' problems, they're smaller, but they still have stuff to do, right?
That's right. Yeah,
I mean,
it's big to them.
Their to-do, it's maybe more minuscule, but yeah, it is big to them. Just like things are big to us now, and maybe they won't be in a year. Who knows?
That's right.
Anyway, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I was just thinking about our topic today and where I was, and I was actually in Fort Wayne when the ruling came down, and we were I was in the chapel, and I just thought it was interesting just to share this little tidbit, because I think that might be a thing that people will be considering in the future, is a little bit, or reflecting on in the future, is like where they were when this ruling came down. But receiving the Lord's Supper during the day in the church year was the nativity of St. John the Baptist. So I thought that was a very fitting thing, and a very easy thing to reflect on and to remember, and also to give thanks to God for. So yeah, we're talking about the Supreme Court ruling overturning Roe versus Wade. It's obviously a very deep, visceral, and frustrating topic for some, and for others, it's a topic that kind of goes along those other lines of things that you don't discuss in decent company, right? What are those things, David? Religion, politics, and money. Yep. And actually, Roe versus Wade involves all three, because
at least we're covering our bases.
Yeah, at least we're covering our bases, and we just assume that people who are watching this are not decent company, so that are listening to us. So I guess we have free reign to talk about it, right?
That's it.
But you think about like how this is an issue that deals with the sanctity of human life. This is a issue that for the last 50 years and even beyond that, really, leading up to its decision in 1973, was and became a growing political problem and frustration fleshed out in the public square, thinking about how the sexual revolution of the 60s have great implications towards that ruling back in the early 70s. And then money, of course, is a huge factor in this, not so much for the Christian side of things, but, when you base your whole entire business on the murder of children with Planned Parenthood, you have something definitely to quote unquote lose, and it's not human life, it's your bottom dollar. So, so we're checking off all the boxes today. And we won't necessarily be talking about those things in that particular order. But here's what we're going to do today. We've had some time to think about this court case, and I think one of the things that might be very helpful on the onset here is to discuss the couple things that come out of what we call the preface to the Supreme Court ruling, or the syllabus of the Supreme Court ruling. But so I'm going to go into that in somewhat detail, just kind of briefly pull some quotes from the actual ruling so we can actually say, hey, we looked at this, and, listener, you can go somewhat informed to those debating, conversational, screaming matches with some sort of well-informed mind about why this ruling was overturned, not because the justices simply didn't like abortion, maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but because they thought it was bad law. But that leads me to the first thing that we're going to actually just briefly touch on at the top of this discussion. David and I were talking about, the reception of a ruling like this, and how often the church or how people in general respond to a ruling like this. And then, even talking about how people in the church respond to a Supreme Court ruling, and one that has such, again, deep and visceral reactions, very emotional, emotionally seated in the mind of people. It often can be the thing where it's said that abortion is a political topic, and through. It has nothing to do with the church, and that the church shouldn't say anything at all on the topic whatsoever. And that's just completely wrong. It's absolutely, it's a cop-out. It's an escapism. It's an attempt for, I would even say, some of the bigger culprits on this, I wouldn't say necessarily the bigger, but one of the culprits in this are Christians who just want to avoid this topic altogether, who do not want to address this because maybe they've had, unfortunately, themselves an interaction with the abortion topic. Maybe they themselves have gone through an abortion or considered one, and or they know people who have. And I understand, and I can empathize with the pain of rehashing such a topic. But unfortunately, it is in the conversation of our society, and we can't run and hide from the things that are very important topics to speak on. But we can speak about them in love. And just a couple illustrations here about that very, that initial pushback that this is a political topic and pastors shouldn't be talking about it in their church. Certainly they shouldn't be wearing collars sitting on a podcast and talking about it. I've never heard that one before, David, on the show.
I would contend too that the church has a lot to say about religion and money and politics anyhow.
Yeah.
I mean, because
and you know
the Bible
why?
has a lot to say
and
about
you know why?
Religion and money
because
and politics.
Jesus has said a lot on those three things. Hey, guy.
I would say too.
Only Jesus can talk about those things, not you pastors. You're not his voice piece. Nope. Ignore those parts of the scriptures. Say nice things. Speak nothing.
The thing too is
sweet
like,
nothings.
for those for those who know, like someone who's had an abortion or someone who has considered one or received one themselves, sure, that could be a point of shame. But honestly, this is what makes it all the easier to run to Jesus. By trying to deny those things or deny that it's touched your life in some way, you're not allowing Jesus to do his restoration work. You're not allowing him to heal your soul in the way. And not to say the pain will ever go away, especially if you've gone through one. There's always going to be that reminder there. But at least know that in repentance, Christ is still there to embrace you with forgiveness. And if you see, how the abortion can push you in that direction back towards the gospel, I mean, then it doesn't become as painful for it to get brought up anymore. And so people, when they try to avoid it, they literally enslave themselves to, or really, like, I mean, maybe not enslave themselves. Well, yeah, I guess, I mean, Paul says that. They remain slaves to sin.
Yeah, their minds are captivated.
But they really put a barrier between themselves and Christ, and that's never good.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right, David. There's only healing in speaking on these things, and only the imprisonment continues when you seek to find shelter in silence. And so it's not good for you. That is a pastoral care comment there. That's something that you should talk to your pastor about this. Whether you've gone through one or whether you need to kind of just talk about it in general and find your voice in this. We're not asking people to become, this, great pro-life apologist sort of thing, but the simple witness between neighbor to neighbor, and even in the knowledge of your own heart and mind about what God's word says on this, goes a long way. Okay, well, that's probably sufficient enough there. They're dissenting Christians all over the place. They're dissenting. We have a dissenting world, and it's just kind of is oxymoron, ironic. I don't know what the right term is, but you think about how when slavery was being decided in the highest court, was it wrong for abolitionist Christians to participate in that conversation? We would say the Christians were maybe silent for too long and speaking out against those sort of things, or any other kind of egregious evil, especially on human life. You want the church there. You want the church advocating for you. So, especially for Christians, that should be your default. The default should be, where is the church speaking about life and doing it boldly. The response should not be, and is a sinful one, to say that the church should be silent where God's word tells us that we have to speak. Don't go against God's word, Homiletics 101. Being a faithful witness 101. Okay.
Being a Christian 101.
Being a Christian 101. Yeah. All right. So on to the preface here, David. This is, I think it's very fascinating. I didn't get to read the whole thing. I think it's some 200 pages for the ruling. Yeah, I don't know if that includes the dissent. Was that? No, I couldn't. I did not have time for that.
For 200 pages, you didn't have that kind of time this week?
No, I didn't. I didn't have the kind of week that gave me that. But I had some time to read the syllabus. So a little bit different than our parlance with what a syllabus is, but I guess in some ways, in other ways not. But so I want you to kind of bear with me a little bit, because I'm going to go through these three sections. So you've had time, at least you've had the time, and whether you've taken it or not, that's up to you, I suppose, to have read some of the rulings, maybe read it all, unlike me. And the syllabus is what you typically find in the early aftermath of any Supreme Court ruling, where someone on the news, breaking news, the Supreme Court just ruled X, Y, or Z. Usually what they are reading from is the syllabus portion. It's the introduction. We might call it the preface to the to the ruling. And what it does is it helpfully articulates in a more condensed way what it is and what were the reasons for the ruling as they did. And I want to go through these things, and I hope that you will stick with me here, and I want you to hear this particularly because I want to reemphasize that the court ought not to, rule on things because it is socially acceptable or unacceptable. That's not their foundations for how they rule on things, or isn't supposed to be their rulings for how they rule on things. You can make the argument, perhaps, that the societal conversation of the day in 1973 overly politicized, pushed the ruling to be as it was. As in all unfortunate rulings that come from the Supreme Court, they are usually socially motivated and unfounded in history as well as in reason. So this overruling looks first. I'm going to read this to you, and I've cut certain sections out. So if for some reason you're following along in the syllabus of the Supreme Court ruling, which I definitely don't expect you to be doing, you'll notice that I'm kind of putting different pull quotes together here just for our time's sake. So first, the court reviews the standard that the court's cases have used to determine whether the 14th Amendment's reference to liberty protects a particular right. The Constitution makes no express reference to a right to obtain abortion. So right away you have that as the first initial thing, that the court found no such evidence that the Constitution permits this. In fact, one of the things that even goes before the ruling, before the syllabus in there, is kind of just like this really brief statement about the ruling itself. And I skipped over that accidentally here. And that kind of basic one sentence, couple sentences put together about the ruling says this: the Constitution does not confer a right to abortion. Roe and Casey, another case on abortion as subsequent to this, or alongside this, are overruled. So Roe and Casey are overruled, and the authority to regulate abortion is returned to the people and their elected representatives. And this is something that people should be aware of as well. It doesn't mean that abortion is no longer exists in the United States of America. It is alive and unfortunately active in our country, and so that's where Christians now kind of return our focus is on these individual states and seeking opportunities to protect life in each one of those. Okay, I'm going to go on now from that first section. Roe held that the abortion right is part of a right to privacy. So that was what they made. That was the case that they made in 1973, that it was a right to privacy that springs from the First, Fourth, Fifth, Ninth, and 14th Amendments. The Casey court grounded its decision solely on the theory that the right to obtain an abortion is part of the quote-unquote liberty protected by the 14th Amendment's Due Process Clause. Others have suggested that support can be found in the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, but that theory is squarely foreclosed by the court's precedents, which establish that a state's regulation of abortion is not a sex-based classification. And David, I think that's really important that we kind of emphasize that there, that the 14th Amendment has never been seen as a sex-based classification of due process or rights for an individual. One of the things that sometimes the illustration that's made with the right to privacy as the grounding for Roe is like, if you see something being done privately in somebody's home, they forgot to close the blinders or something like that, and you see somebody hacking up another person, is it illegal for you to call the cops because you're violating their privacy? If you're on the top balcony and they're on a lower balcony, and there's some sort of, murder taking place, do you just say, well, it's in their home. Who am I to say that they should or shouldn't be doing these things in the privacy of their own home? So its grounding was initially weak and unfounded. And so it's been a long time coming for originalist Supreme Court justices who don't interpret it by their own likes or dislikes, even though that may be very true in all of these individuals' cases that voted to overturn it. But And we don't know that. What we do know is what they've written, what they've confessed, what they've said constitutionally is ungrounded. David, do you have any comments about that? Are you for or against letting people hack each other up in their house?
I am totally against that. Okay. Part of the situation here, and it always comes back to this, right? And I think we're going to touch on this later, but that does life actually start at conception or not? Mm-hmm. Because as Christians, obviously, we confess that life does start at conception. And so we would see an abortion as someone getting, the same level as someone getting hacked up in the neighbor's house or whatever. But, with that, if we're going to define a life starting at conception, then we can start talking about like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah.
Because that, according, to the right to life, they deserve that. And so, yeah, obviously we would need to blow the whistle on all of that, but,
no, you're right. And let's talk about it a little bit here, about life beginning from conception, because one of the thoughts is that, that's where that comes from, the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That liberty was this thing that they were able to kind of exploit under the privacy clause, so that, in the privacy in consultation with your doctor, you can choose to, end whatever it is in your womb. But what is that? What is that thing in your womb? You'll hear things where people will say it's a clump of cells, it's a parasite. It's like,
I love when they call it a fetus, because fetus is Latin for baby. It's just a fetus. It's just a baby. Yeah. It's not a baby. It's just a baby.
It's not a baby. It's a baby. Yeah. Logic is defied a lot in this ruling. When you look at etymology, do I have that right? Embryology, not etymology. Etymology for what is a fetus, but
right.
Embryology. When you look at embryology, it does. It is a standard belief held in biological observation that when there is a procreative act that occurs, we'll put it that way, procreation can occur. And that the thing that happens in one's womb is nothing other than human from the moment that there is conception. And I'm not going to get into the more biological sciences of this unless you really want to, David. I'm sure there will be plenty of people who will talk on that topic. Our purposes, I think, are more theological in nature. As pastors who are grappling with this headline and working with perhaps even people in our congregations, we can maybe have those type of questions. But it's weird when the pastor becomes the biology teacher. It's so weird.
Sure. I would just say the grappling is going to be with your people. Because I'm not grappling with this at all. I'm perfectly content with this. This is a decisive victory for life, right? So, but the folks who are out in the world and maybe, maybe a little bit more naive as far as, how, like how we started, how much God actually does have to say about life issues and where this is supposed to stand according to Scripture. They're the ones that we have to guide along and make sure that they're staying in the truth and remaining with Christ and being faithful. So,
right, exactly. Encouraging them to be like, hey, your faith is not unreasonable here in any way. If anything, it speaks more to reality than anything else. And I think that's one of the things that we're building our. So if you're following along a little bit, you might be like, I wonder if they're going to talk about, where does truth come from? Because that seems pretty foundational to how you can rule on anything. And you're right. That's exactly where this is going to. So the second thing here, next, the court examines whether the right to obtain an abortion is rooted in the nation's history and tradition, and whether it is an essential component of ordered liberty. So, if liberty is the place that you gather that definition for how one can have the right to an abortion, do we see that? Do we see that in the history of the nation that would be the founding work for what, built the Constitution, and therefore, you see a precedent in the life of the development of this country that gives you, that a good reason to say that, hey, this has always been a part of American culture. It's always been a part of who we are intrinsically as a people, let alone when we appeal to reason. And the court finds that the right to abortion is not deeply rooted in the nation's history and tradition. Guided by the history and tradition that map the essential components of the nation's concept of ordered liberty, the court finds the 14th Amendment clearly does not protect the right to an abortion. Until the latter part, I thought this was really interesting, until the latter part of the 20th century, there was no support in American law for a constitutional right to obtain an abortion. No state constitutional provision had recognized such a right until a few years before Roe. Think about that. I mean, think about like the precedent is unequivocally outside the bounds of where Roe was founded upon. Until a few years before Roe, no federal or state court had recognized such a right, nor had any scholarly treatise. Indeed, abortion had long been a crime in every single state. Every single
for
state
almost
had
200 years. You're saying that there was no precedent for abortion for 200 years in our country,
right?
And even
Yes.
before the country started. Oh, bizarre!
Mm-hmm.
That's strange.
Yeah, and so
it's completely unnatural to kill your children.
But this is what you see in the kind of the national conversation, if you will, that there is a precedent. They ask every Supreme Court justice, will you uphold the precedent of Roe versus Wade? And this is actually a really big debate about the role of precedent in legal law in constitutional law, and one that I'm not don't have fully grasped, but I know enough about it to be somewhat dangerous. There's the doctrine of stare decisis. I'm probably getting that wrong. Basically, it's the idea that precedent is what you use to bring to a court case to say, hey, these are all the examples of other places where in our country's law we have upheld X, Y, or Z, and therefore judge and jury, that's why I should win this court case because of these precedents. So they use those things as essentially footnotes to the thesis of any court proceedings. So that is where the last and the third, thank you guys for following along so far, the final section here in the syllabus really points out is the role of precedent and to understand its proper role. And I think what they said here was very helpful. I think it might have been Judge Alito that wrote this syllabus. But okay, finally, the court considers whether a right to obtain an abortion is part of a broader, entrenched right that is supported by other precedents. The court concludes the right to obtain an abortion cannot be justified as a component of such a right. Attempts to justify abortion through appeals to a broader right to autonomy and to define one's quote-unquote concept of existence prove too much. Those criteria at the high level of generality could license fundamental rights to illicit drug use, prostitution, and the like. So what that means is if you create a precedent about what liberty is, and you base it in kind of a sex-based classification, or you kind of open it up to any sort of definition for what the concept of existence is, the court says that proves too much. It's just too wide of a gate. There's nothing then that could ever be legislative. There's nothing that could ever be restrained. You could give full license to people who want to use illicit drugs. This is the examples that they give, to prostitute their bodies out. And then they say, and the like. So, liberty does not permit you to use your body in any way. And one of the ways that you can think about this is, myself or a woman can not they can't do anything with their body. They can't take their hand and punch another person and or murder them. They can't do that with their bodies. So, the whole idea of my body, my choice, I can have full reign, full liberty to do whatever I want. None of us has that right. None of us has the right to take away some sort of concept of what liberty is from another person, i.e. their life. At the very basis, at the very foundation, we can't use our bodies to rob other people of a basic liberty, which is life. And so the court finds that this is unfounded. So the doctrine of stare decisis, basically precedent of previous rulings, does not counsel continued acceptance of Roe and Casey. This stare decisis plays an important role and protects the interest of those who have taken action in reliance on a past decision. It reduces incentives for challenging settled precedents, saving parties and courts the expense of endless litigation. So, like, if there's a court case that's been around for a while and it's been used, do you have to re-legislate? Do you have to re-go through those court proceedings to find out whether or not your basis for whatever you're taking to court? In most cases, you don't need to. They say that in most cases that the precedent should stand. It contributes to the actual and perceived integrity of the judicial process. And it restrains judicial hubris, pride, by respecting the judgment of those who grappled with important questions in the past. But, and of course, here's the caveat, stare decisis is not an inexorable command. Some of the court's most important constitutional decisions have overruled prior precedents. Think about Brown versus Board of Education. Brown versus Board of Education overruled Plessy versus Ferguson that cited segregation of public schools and facility as an inherent inequality. So Plessy versus Ferguson was the separate but equal Supreme Court ruling that kept blacks segregated, and that was in 1896, and then in 1954 it was overruled because the precedent that it had established created an inequality. So what we find here is that just because something is a precedent doesn't necessarily mean that it deserves continual benevolence or following by the court. There are times where precedents can be found to be unfounded. David, any thoughts there as we went through those three sections, those three major movements of the court ruling?
If I can connect two pieces of news that have rolled out, in terms of this Roe v. Wade thing, I also think about that shooting in Uvalde, Texas.
Yeah.
Because what happened there is there is a person who, and granted, in their case, it was illegal, right? Is illegally taking the life of other people. And he has, he is capable of making that choice for himself, but it is an illegal choice. And in making that illegal choice, he has now taken the lives of children. And so how are we outraged about this shooting? And then we look at something like Roe v. Wade and we go, okay, well, what's going on now? Now we're making it legal for us to put pregnant women into a room with a killer and have their babies removed from them and killed. And no one is crying out about the bloodbath. I mean, until now, right? Now we're recognizing how evil a thing this actually is. But I don't really think that there's a vast difference between those two situations, except for in one case, people say, guns are bad, and that guy needed to be put down, right? Someone needed to step up and kill the shooter. And in this case, no one is stepping up and saying, "Oh, we need to put Roe v. Wade, which is a killer, to death. That this needs to be killed." People are thinking about it in the other direction, that or at least some people are saying what an atrocity.
David, you're not advocating just because people love to run with lies. David is not advocating for the murder of abortionists. Okay, so
don't get me don't get me that way. No, I don't want people to riot. I don't want people to go out and destroy Planned Parenthood buildings or something. Don't do any of that. Yeah, don't get your wires crossed here. I'm just saying there's certainly a 1-to-1. Thank you for that clarification. But you understand my point, though.
Yeah, and I think sane people understand your point, and even the insane, I think, understand. But again, I began the show with how people who are against the Constitution want abortion to remain constitutional, even though abortion is anti-constitution, so they should not want it. But it's insanity. It's insanity, and so everybody takes every little thing, and they're like, okay, so David is saying that that the shooting is just like abortions, and so I guess we can be as trivial about it. I guess I don't know what people think. Just something totally off the rocker. David is simply giving a perfectly fine illustration connecting two things together that are pretty obvious: the destruction of human life. So. Just take it for what it is, people. Okay, relax.
I don't want people to get murdered. All right, that's all. Yeah. I don't want anybody to get murdered, including unborn babies.
Right. When in doubt, we don't want anybody to be.
Yeah. Don't kill anybody.
Yes.
You understand? But
the more also, you know.
On the same. All right. On the same line of thinking, though, right? Because as you were talking in that second point, that your liberty, you can't just punch somebody in the face, right? So your liberties end where they start to infringe on somebody else's liberty, right?
Yeah, they stop at the tip of the nose.
Legally, needs to not infringe on somebody else. And so clearly, with abortion,
you can flail your arms around all you want, but the minute you hit somebody, you've now crossed the line.
Right.
Sorry, I cut you off there. What were you saying?
No, I was just going to say. So I think in both these situations, whether it be this overturn of Roe v. Wade or the Uvalde thing, I think we see that in both instances, liberties are being attacked by someone.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's not right. So
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so it's not right. Where do our rights come from? Okay, this is foundational. I think this is ultimately where the argument is really at. And it's extremely important for the Christian to have a good answer for this, because ultimately I think that the people who are maliciously thinking through this topic, they know that this is actually very, very much at the core of any sort of ruling, any sort of law and legal system that has some sort of consistency. It's truth, and truth is a very inconvenient thing for those who want to perpetuate relativism, who they want to kind of pick and choose what kind of things how they're going to live, what kind of liberty they're going to live by, and the minute you kind of say, well, there should be some this should be bridled in a way, we actually have a grounding for what is truth and reasonable. That's where it becomes sticky. The U.S. Constitution provides we the people to self-governance, but then the question is, where do you derive that ability to self-govern with such laws? Ultimately, the answer is that we self-govern from either truth or relevance, that is, objectively or subjectively. Now, the way that we can at least initially talk about this is that you have natural law, which is observable truth, They are inseparable between law and morals. They are together. Versus what is called legal positivism, and that is a social construct that separates laws from morality, because in truth, morality doesn't even exist. Morality is whatever you make it. Your life is whatever you make it. So law becomes the very thing that governs people's lives. And more importantly, who makes those laws? So, which is the thing that is kind of spoken in the quiet with legal positivism, because it is a social constructed legalism. It means that if you have the wrong person in power, your life could be extremely miserable. And it's neither bad nor good that your life is miserable. But in natural law, we can actually say, hey, there's actually things, foundational things that we can look at that couple with the law, and it helps us understand that whether a law is good or bad. So natural law can speak to whether something is good or evil, good or bad. But legal positivism, which is what we find in these dissenting voices of the justices who do not operate in an originalist way, looking at the Constitution. They are living constitutionalists. They are people who are more happy to create precedents and laws based on societal differences and changes and ever-moving norms, instead of something that is constitute or resolute or consistent. They're not looking for consistency. They're looking for relevance. What is relevant today is irrelevant tomorrow. And so laws get heaped on top of laws. Things are constantly ever changing, living, if you will, living constitution. And so that's, and from that perspective, you can never really have anything that is worthy to be called foundational. And it actually leads to the corruption of a nation. And this is, I won't get into all this, but you can make a lot of, you can say a lot on this very topic about the fall of like the Roman Empire and how they kind of moved from foundational beliefs, moved away from the foundational beliefs and started embracing things that were kind of in this realm of legal positivism, really moving and shifting their life and society based on what they wanted, and that always changed from one person in power to the next.
Well, the question too is like, is truth universal? Like, is truth objective? Is there something out there that you can point at and say, yeah, that's truth? And then everything else has to fall in line behind that. And I explain this to people in terms of scripture and being Lutheran and things like that. Like, we have the scriptures, which are true. And then we have our Book of Concord, which is simply just a faithful explanation and exhibition of what the scriptures say. And so, while they are on, almost equal playing fields, because one is just saying exactly what the other one has already said, the Book of Concord always is subservient to the scriptures. That's why we say it's true, is because it says exactly what the scriptures say. And so the same thing should happen in a functioning country, where whatever document that governs you, or king that governs you, or whoever is governing you, so long as they put themselves in proper order under what is the objective truth, which as Christians we would say is God's word. So as long as we can put ourselves in subjection under that, then our society will continue to continue in some way, shape, or form in a positive manner. But as soon as we start saying, nope, well, there is no objective truth, so now what becomes the standard for us is whatever my own personal whims are. And if I'm the person in power and my personal whims don't align with this truth, well, what do we see? But we see society starting to be torn down and degraded, and people aren't considered people anymore, especially in this case. But there is universal truth, and I think that's one of the big things that our world denies today, is that what is truth? That's what Pilate asked Jesus when Jesus is standing there in front. What is truth? Well, doofus, he's literally standing right in front of you. That is truth. You're literally staring him in the face. But again, obviously, there's all sorts of sin that happened to Jesus too, because truth wasn't recognized in that situation.
Yeah, we're
So,
going to talk about Pilate here in a second here as kind of the biblical foundations before our break. Guys, this is a special show today. It's going to be longer, but this is a monumental discussion about the Supreme Court ruling, something that in at least David and I's lifetime, we've never lived in a world that was outside of a federally allowed abortions in our country. So it's a pretty monumental day. Nearly 50 years later, Roe versus Wade is overturned. That's our topic. That's what we're talking about today. David, you talk about that our world hates absolute truth. That it hates objective truth, and they say that so absolutely. You can't make this stuff up.
they're just doubling down on wandering around in the midst of chaos.
Yeah. A world that lives in darkness. Okay, so Christians cannot be legal positivists. Then we see the triune God as the creator of the world. Nature and law subsists therein. So our rights come from religion, and reason serves religion. Reason is subservient to that. There's another whole topic on that alone, but I think that's sufficient for now to say that when we look at things and we say, "Hey, that makes sense. That's reasonable," we are drawing that we are drawing those conclusions from natural law and the broader discussion that could be had there. Most especially looking at the one who makes laws, who has created this world, our triune God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Okay, so how do Christians make sense then of observable natural law? Now, right now, we're not necessarily speaking to the atheists per se, but we really need to encourage, and what we're kind of desiring for this particular episode is to encourage our brothers and sisters in Christ to be able to think through their conversations with one another, because ultimately, if there's the breakdown in the church, it's going to make the broader societal discussion and debate and screaming matches more difficult, more screamy, more debatey, less conversational. So it's good for us Christians to grapple with how the scriptures speak about this. If you're a Christian that believes in the scriptures, which you kind of have to be. But John 18, John 18, verses 37 through 38. David, do you have that up in front of you? Can I ask you to read that?
Yeah. And this is the text I was just referring to. Starting with verse 37 here. Then Pilate said to him, "So you are a king?" And Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king, and for this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice." Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" After he had said this, he went back outside to the Jews and told them, "I find no guilt in him."
This is what we were just talking about. Like, the world who is against absolute truth is just beautifully encapsulated right here in Pilate, who dismisses the incarnate truth, the Word made flesh, the true word of God in His very presence, denies Him. And then he goes out, he says, "So, like, what is truth? No one can know it." Pilate is the best poster boy for relativism and subjective truth. And then he's like, "I find no guilt in him." Objective. He's because really making a very objective.
That's what is truth. He can't tell you what truth is, but he can tell you that it's wrong to kill Jesus.
Yeah. He says, yeah.
Did you see the meme? This past week they came out, and it was after the Roe v. Wade decision comes down, and then it says, "Suddenly everyone knows what a woman is." Oh
yeah, that's really good. Yeah. But we laugh, but isn't it so telling? Which is your point, right? Isn't it so telling?
It's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
They can't see truth, but yet now they're confessing a truth.
Yeah.
And so the same people who are decrying
because it's relevant to do so.
Overturned, and now
it's convenient to do so.
Talking out of both sides of your mouth.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
It is the problem of cognitive dissonance, to the maximum level. that you can say one thing and speak another, and they are deeply contradictory, and yet at the same time, the same person, holds these truths to be, inalienable rights.
Self-evident.
Self-evident, yeah, self-evident. Yeah, they believe it to be self-evident, even though they are deeply opposed to each other. So, yeah, it's talk about the hubris of a people. Talk about the pride of a people. Where they're just totally unable to be humbled in any capacity, humbled under truth. So, what else can we take from this, David? Is there anything else that we can talk about this with Pilate and his interaction with truth incarnate here? Jesus says that he comes to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. Talk about where our natural laws are derived from. This is ultimate. Again, this is why I say the ultimate problem with abortion isn't abortion; it's the power to legislate abortion. Maybe I haven't made that as clearly as I need to. The issue is never the issue. As I, in my conversations with my wife and even probably with you, David, it's just like, why are they doing that? X, Y, and Z. And you're like, it's not that. That's not the reason why they're doing X, Y, and Z. It's because they want to maintain the power to do so and to perpetually have the power to, enact any sort of law, any sort of social construct that they want, because it's all about power.
Wasn't that the same with Pilate too? I mean, the reason he didn't want to release Jesus is because he was afraid of the riot that might ensue.
Right.
So
when it's power. Interesting. It's interesting the exchange also, because Pilate concludes at the beginning there. He says, "So you are a king," and then Jesus says, "You say that I am a king. For this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I came into the world." And then later on, he'll say, "I find no guilt in him." What is Pilate saying in that also, other than that he speaks out of both sides of his mouth here? It's that he doesn't actually believe that Jesus is the real king, and so he's not threatened by him anymore. And he's basically telling the people that neither do you. He's not a real king, and so he ignores it on multiple fronts, where the Christian is to be very mindful of who Jesus is, and that he is truth incarnate, and that all things ultimately flow from him. Okay, David, would you mind reading John 17 and John 14, those two texts as well?
Yeah. John 17:17, sanctify them in the truth. Your word is truth. And John 14, Jesus said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
So in the first one, it's the high priestly prayer that Jesus is praying for the sake of the whole world, right? And to sanctify is to make one holy. And how are we made holy? We are made holy in truth. Whose truth? In the truth of the word, and specifically Jesus himself. And then Jesus, clarifies this. He's actually, John 14 precedes John 17 here. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And so that no one goes to the Father except through Jesus alone. So nobody walks on the true way. Nobody lives in truth. And nobody has true life unless they are in him. So what Pilate ignores is the way, the truth, and the life. And we have the identification of what people just simply philosophically talk for, what natural law is. We can actually define who is the natural lawgiver. I think that's one of the things that I think makes people who are opposed to truth, opposed to overturning Roe v. Wade, even more anxious, because it's the acknowledgement that at its core, where truth ultimately comes from, is a God, and that the Christians can identify who that living God is. 2 Timothy 4, for the time is coming when people will not endure sound teaching, but having itching ears, they will accumulate for themselves teachers to suit their own passions, and will turn away from listening to the truth and wander off into myths. And boy, do we see that in every age, that people wandering off into the myths of relativism, into the myth of existentialism, which essentially is that philosophical definition for creating your own truths. If it's existentialism is opposed to essentialism, which is a belief in natural law, a belief that there are essential properties of the world that constitute truth and morality and goodness and beauty all around us, and that we can see it and we can note it and we can observe it, and did I already say we can know it? That's what essentialism is. But existentialism really flips it on the head and say, well, we can't really know what true beauty is. We can't really know what a man is, what a woman is. We can't really know these things, so we create what we know. It's creating a reality that is other than a true reality. Okay. So Christians are philosophically consistent, while others who push for their truths cannot be, and are purposely inconsistent, constantly inconsistent, needing to create their worth and defining and redefining norms and principle realities. Hey guys, a lot that we're talking about today. Hope that you're enjoying the show here. Again, a special show today, extended show on this monumental overturning of Roe versus Wade, nearly 50 years, where the federal court has permitted, on the federal level, now back to the states on deciding abortion rights. And so we're talking about all that today. We hope you're enjoying the show. We hope that you consider giving us a like and subscribe to Headlines with the Pastors. We appreciate that. We're coming up on our extra show break, but be sure to stick around because we're going to unpack how our headline applies to a loving of our most vulnerable neighbor, that is the unborn. David, extra, let's laugh all about it. Some nonsense news here. What you got?
All right. Nonsense news. Does everybody know on Headlines with the Pastor who we make our extra whipping boy?
Who do we make our extra?
Jared? Who am I going to harp on right now?
Who am I going to harp on? Well, I think it's got to be Guinness World Book of Records. Is that right?
It is the Guinness Book
of World Records.
Yes,
Yeah.
It is. And I picked this one because, I can relate to this when I was a kid. What I used to love to do is go downstairs. My parents had a food cellar underneath the stairs in our basement. And I'd always grab a Mountain Dew and I wasn't allowed to drink the Mountain Dew. So I was stealing from my parents because they would not allow me to have one. Except for with their permission. And so what I would do though is, that's my truth. But what I would do is I would take that can of Mountain Dew and I would have to drink it as fast as humanly possible. That way I could put the can in the recycling and my parents wouldn't know that I actually drank it. See how this works? Yes, so I got really good at drinking Mountain Dew very fast. And so has a YouTuber known as Eric Badlands Booker, who has set
That's a great name. That's a great name.
Yeah, well, Badlands I think is a nickname of some type. But anyway, so Eric Badlands Booker, right? He took out 2 new world records. One for drinking a liter of Mountain Dew, in the fastest time. And so that was, if you guys want to challenge him here, where'd it go? A liter of Mountain Dew, and the second one is to drink a liter of tomato juice. Which one do you think he did faster? The Mountain Dew he drank in 6.8 seconds. 6.8 seconds of drinking a liter of Mountain Dew. That is insane. I don't know how he does it.
There's a couple of different factors here.
Real hard.
There's a carbonation in the Mountain Dew.
Hang on.
I would assume so. It would be hard to drink the soda so fast because there's carbonation in it. But then the tomato soup is a little bit thicker. But I think carbonation is harder to consume in a fast manner than tomato soup is. So I'm going to go with tomato soup. Am I right?
Well, we're going to pick this up next week, and I'm going to force you to do it on your own. Not the listener. I mean you, Jared. You drink a liter of soda, and you drink a liter of tomato juice, and you tell me which one you're able to accomplish faster.
I won't be here next week, folks.
Oh, shoot. No, he did the tomato juice.
I'll be dead on the floor.
A
What's
minute
that?
and 18 seconds. A minute and 18 seconds for tomato juice.
So longer. Is
So
that,
it
is that
was
right?
considerably longer for the tomato juice,
Yeah.
but you got to think about how thick and gross that must be to.
Oh man.
Yeah, I can't do it.
Why?
He
Why?
has some
That- I
other
mean,
records I
that's
looked up too, which is fun. He ate 9.5 pound bowl of peas in 12 minutes. He ate 4 3/8 and Tenman's pumpkin pies in 12 minutes.
what is
I don't
going
know.
on?
He's like a food competitive eater is what he is.
Okay.
So
Does
and
he
he
get
says
any
he's lost weight.
compensation for this? Oh, he's lost weight. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah, I mean you win the competition. I guess if there's a prize or something, but then you get your name go down in the history with the Guinness Book of World Records. You see how that works?
Yep.
Anyway,
I see it.
Congratulations to Mr. Booker in accomplishing something that no one will ever remember in 500 years from now.
Yep. High society here. High society. High society. Yes.
That's right.
Hey, David. So for my extras, I want to play a little game with you, a kind of pseudo game here with you, based on the topic of celebrities have spoken out about abortion rights. This is a Cosmopolitan magazine
Wait,
article. The height of intellectualism over there at the Cosmopolitan magazine, celebrities who have spoken out about abortion rights. So I want to play a little game, and I hope that everybody listening will enjoy this. This little game is going to be called Celebrities Know Best. And abortion rights edition. So with the Supreme Court having just passed their views on their ruling rather on abortion, we have some celebrities, 21 of them. I'm not going to go through all 21 of them because I don't know all of them. Probably don't know half of them here, and maybe you don't either, and maybe you shouldn't know half of them. But here we go.
I
Okay.
hope I don't know any of them.
I hope you know some of them because it might make the game kind of boring. Okay, so who would you say that they're? I think they're on like a reality TV show, and they say this: 250 plus mass shootings in the U.S. alone, and a woman's body is more regulated than a gun. Get effing real. Okay, someone on a reality TV show featuring their family.
Oh, wow. I have no idea.
You don't know?
Reality TV. No.
Mm-hmm. Think. I'll give you a hint. It's Kardashian World. I think it is anyway.
Is it Kim Kardashian?
No.
She's the only Kardashian I think I know. I don't know.
Kendall Jenner isn't she?
Okay.
Part of that.
Sure.
I could be wrong.
You're right.
We're gonna get
No, that
like,
makes sense.
Okay, good. I'm pretty sure she's part of that world.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think they're sisters. Kim Kardashian and Kendall Jenner.
Okay. Whew. Okay. How about this? Let's see here. We are living in an America I don't recognize. I stand with you for women's rights in this country. This is someone who used to be from the block. I'm still.
J-Lo?
Yeah, Jenny from the block.
Oh, all right.
You're doing good so far. We're getting there.
I grew up in the 90s and early 2000s. I know how that works.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. I am heartbroken for people around this country who just lost the fundamental right to make informed decisions about their own bodies, she wrote in an emotional post. This is what our mothers and grandmothers and great grandmothers lived through, and now here we are again. This is a person who wants to be the next Oprah.
Oh.
We've talked about it. Let's just put it this way: she used to live in the White House.
Oh, it's Michelle Obama.
Michelle Obama. Yeah. Okay, this person is a quote unquote comedian, and she's awful at being a comedian, which you may already have the answer. But bans off our bodies. I don't know what that means. Bans off our bodies or bans. I don't know. Abortion is healthcare. The Supreme Court is going in the wrong direction, she said at a pro-choice rally in light of a leaked document suggesting abortion rights. Well, this is kind of one that was leaked. Women want more rights, more access to abortion, more freedom, not less. Awful comedian, thinks she's really funny, but is not. I hope you get it. I don't know if you will. Oh, that's a really good guess. No, I said that's a good guess. Amy Schumer. That's enough. That's kind of like, the next one. There's not even a face or a description for the ninth person on this list. So I don't know. Maybe that was a celebrity that changed their mind. Moving down here a little bit. Don't know that person. Oh, here we go. Here's someone. It's so unbelievable. It makes me like red. It makes my ears effing steam out of my head. Women should say, should do, and feel and be exactly what they want. There should be nobody else telling them how to live their life, how to do she said. It just makes me so mad that if I start talking about it, I won't stop. Men should not make women's choices. That's all I have to say. She's a bad guy.
She clearly doesn't understand that there are some women on the Supreme Court.
You're right.
But based on your description, yes. That's got to be Billie Eilish, right?
Billie Eilish. Here we go.
So yeah,
David, the culture icon here. David knows all the celebrities.
You're skipping over the ones I don't know, right? Please. There are some on that list you don't know that you're not reading, right?
Yeah, there's several. Yeah, I put in some filler words here so that I could skip over all these people who have no idea who they are. This is absolutely unbelievable. This is a guy. If you're not worried about Roe v. Wade, you're not paying attention. This is why voting matters, says Captain America.
Oh, really? No way.
Yep.
Huh. That's a shame. That's a shame.
Do you know the celebrity's name off the top of your head? It's one of the Chris's.
I don't remember.
Chris Evans. Chris Evans.
Yeah.
This is an outrage to ban abortion in Alabama, period. And all the more heinous that it excludes those who have been raped and are experiencing incest, non-consensual or not. So, of course, this person is talking about how giving certain rights for abortion in certain circumstances, like rape and incest. However, of course, as Christians, our response to that would be horrible situation, awful thing that happened to that person, for sure. But you don't make the child in the womb pay for the injustice caused by a perpetrator, a rapist, or incestuous person. Okay, continuing on though. So there's a high penalty for doctors who perform these operations than for most rapists. This is a travesty, and I pray for all these women and young girls who suffer at the hands of this system, she added. Hey, she wasn't putting on her poker face for this one.
Oh, it's Lady Gaga.
Lady Gaga. I make fun of you for being able to answer all these, but I have all the social references to give you the clues. I'm equally culpable here.
Right.
Let's see. Women can't be free if they don't control their bodies, says the one who played an actress in Hunger Games. Oh, but not for the unborn. Oh, take that down. Take that down. I don't volunteer. Nope. Right. Hunger Games are okay. Right. Hunger Games are okay in the USA, as this one would say. Do you know the actress?
Right. It's Jennifer Lawrence, right?
That's right. Okay, let's see. Finishing up here. Forced birth and illegal abortions across state lines is backwards and cruel. The Supreme Court has become the division thanks to Alito and his ilk of right-wing radicals who are toxic to the court's impartiality, which, again, we already talked about why the court makes these rulings, but, Hulk mad.
Is that your clue, Hulk mad?
Yeah, Hulk mad, yeah.
Is it
Mark Ruffalo? Yep.
Yeah, that's a bummer too.
Well, he's a big leftist.
Right.
Okay, and finally here, these state houses are waging all-out war on women and their right to control their reproductive decisions. I love the statement of state houses. It reminds me of what did AOC say? She said, "I'm gonna get this wrong." When she was talking about the three branches of government, what did she say? Oh no, she's like the three sections of government or something like that. Like she didn't say branches. Like that's like she said something other than our usual parlance of on this. But the man, the myth, the legend had that to say about the war on women and the right to abortion.
No,
John Legend. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I know John Legend is supposed to be important, but I couldn't even tell you what he does. He's an actor.
I think he's done it all, man. I think he's done it all. He's a singer.
I've heard his name like a billion times, but he
particularly.
Sings. I'm sure I've probably
sings,
heard one of his songs. I just don't know which ones they are.
Well, that's been our episode. That's been our game today of Celebrities Know Best, Abortion Rights Edition. Maybe we'll pull that out in another time and another show. Moving on for us, let's turn now to our second half of the show here. Our topic, this topic on the SCOTUS ruling. Who is in our most vulnerable neighbor that needs this protection? It is, in fact, the unborn. And to help us talk about this in particular, David, I'm going to ask you to read our reading for this upcoming Sunday, the fifth Sunday after Pentecost, Luke chapter 10, verses 25 through 37. This is, we're going to read it in its full because it is the parable of the Good Samaritan, and you can't really dice that one up. You can't really section that off, and you kind of have to hear the whole thing. So, David, if you wouldn't mind reading that for us, I would appreciate it.
Yeah. Here we go. Luke 10, starting with verse 25. And behold, a lawyer stood up to put Jesus to the test, saying, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? He said to him, What is written in the law? How do you read it? And he answered, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And he said to him, You have answered correctly. Do this, and you will live. But he, desiring to justify himself, said to Jesus, And who is my neighbor? Jesus replied, A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among robbers who stripped him and beat him and departed, leaving him half dead. Now, by chance, a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was. When he saw him, he had compassion. He went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he set him on his own animal, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. And the next day he took out 2 denarii, and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay. I will repay you when I come back. Which of these 3 do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among the robbers? He said, The one who showed him mercy. And Jesus said to him, You go and do likewise.
All right. Thank you, David. Appreciate that. So
this is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Or wait, no, this is the gospel of the Lord. Sorry. Praise to you, O Christ.
Praise to you, O Christ. So this is what is this text then most immediately? That's what we like to do on the show here, is that when we talk about a particular text that's coming up for this next Sunday, we like to focus specifically on what the text is particularly saying, and then we will apply it to what we are talking about in the news and in the headlines. So, David, when you look at that, what are some of your initial thoughts as you were reading through that? Did you have anything in particular that you really like to emphasize when you teach this or preach this?
Yeah. First and foremost, obviously, it's about Jesus defining what a neighbor is. And I've actually heard several different thoughts on this, because in my in my teaching on this anyway, what I do is I always tell people that your neighbor exists in concentric circles, and so your most immediate neighbor are the people who are in your family. Take care of them, right? And the people who are next most your neighbor are maybe the people in your church, or your friends or something like that. And then the next circle, that as it branches out, right, is the people in your community or your town, and then in your state, and then in your country, and then in the world. Mm-hmm. And so, when you think about what Jesus is actually saying here, is he's not so much telling you that you should be worried about your neighbor who lives halfway across the world in China. Don't neglect them or wish ill on them or something like that. But the person who is most in need of you to be a neighbor is the person that you actually interact with and see in your own life.
That's before you. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so
whether that be someone you know or a stranger, right?
Yeah.
Whether that's someone you know or as a stranger, whoever is the person in front of you, as well as globally speaking, of course.
And this is where it comes out well that Jesus uses the Samaritan as an example, because Jews and Samaritans hated each other, right? Samaritans didn't worship in Jerusalem. They mostly left behind the Jewish church, as we'll call them, at that point. And so, the fact that it's a Samaritan who actually helps this Jew, or who we assume is a Jew, right? Because he's going from Jerusalem to Jericho. It's somebody who we would not expect to help is the person who helps. In fact, somebody that we expect to walk by on the other side is actually the one who binds up the man's wounds. And so, don't let whatever your preconceived ideas are about somebody get in the way. If you see a Muslim, I guess we're going to talk religiously, right? Or an atheist or something like that who's in need, don't withhold your help just because you don't check their card. You don't check their religious card before you assist them, and that's basically what happens along the way here. Is that they could not care less for the person that was there, because they could obviously see that this was someone beneath them, and so they essentially checked their class and of personhood and decided to ignore it altogether. Well, as you were describing it, I was thinking of the three estates that Luther describes. The home, the church, and then the state or the government. So kind of your communities, it kind of is a catch-all for all those things. So I think that is a very helpful way of, in Lutheranism, again, this could be another whole show, talking about our theology of vocationalism. I think that vocational theology is good. I'm not against it in any way, but I think that it has you can have a better understanding of it in the way that you described it, David, when you speak about our estates. It's a much easier way of understanding vocational theology that doesn't lends itself to the error of relativistic thinking, because vocationalism can sometimes do that, where you so partition out the person. I said I wasn't going to talk about it, but now I'm talking about you so partition out the person that they become like, I'm a student, I'm a son, I'm a father, and you're like all these little tiny things, and then you kind of like collect them up and like, I'm all these things, instead of just saying, well, in my role in the home, I am all these things. And so instead of like partitioning on them all out and then kind of giving more worth to one thing over another, or ignoring one factor of your vocation, you can kind of justify yourself. But when you more tightly understand who you are and who your neighbor is through the three estates that Luther provides, it is a better way of understanding who we are as people, as well as understanding what vocation is and how we operate and live
in the world and as Christians. So I thought that was really helpful, David. Thank you for that. Well, what about our topic then? How is the unborn our most vulnerable neighbor worthy of our protection? Are the unborn humans do they deserve our protection? Of course, I would answer that in the affirmative. Of course, they are worthy of our protection, and being completely dependent upon their parents or their guardian. They are the most vulnerable neighbor that we have, and the church needs to provide for them. Often the argument is very foolishly, I believe, from usually the pro-choice camp is that, oh, you Christians, if you're going to deny abortion, are you going to adopt them all? Are you going to take care of them all? Are you going to be able to provide for their medical bills and all that kind of sort of thing? It's a total denial of the initial foundational quality and essence of what a person is. And it's like, regardless of my ability to take in all the children or pay for all their medical bills, that does not negate the very fact that they are a living human being worthy of our protection, worthy of our care, worthy of giving our best unto them, because they are in fact a living human being. From the moment of conception, they are our weakest and most vulnerable neighbor. We should, as a church, desire to be a people who help as much as we can, as well as come alongside those who are great helpers in this. That's parents, that's guardians, that's those who foster care, that's those who adopt. It's those pregnancy crisis centers and such. And I know, David, you had talked about that very specifically, about now's the time for the church to kind of rally all the more around them. I want to give you an opportunity to kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't think they're wrong. The people who say, well, are you going to pay for their medical bills? You're going to adopt them. Like, yes, you're right. This is exactly what the church is called to do.
Right. I mean, exactly.
And again, for the unbeliever, for the person who has no faith, like, I don't expect you to go and, volunteer at the crisis pregnancy center. I don't expect you to give money to an adoption agency, or, try to find Christian parents who can't afford it and help them financially in order that they can have adopt a child in some way. But that is exactly what the church should be doing. Collect money for that, collect blankets for that, go volunteer your time. And honestly, I think we're going to be seeing a big increase now that Roe v. Wade has been overturned, especially in these states with all those trigger laws where it's already now illegal to get an abortion. We're going to need to have, and I think we're going to see it, but we're going to need more crisis pregnancy centers in those places and really across the board, because women are going to end up having children and not knowing what to do and not knowing how to deal with it. Certainly, I don't want to make this, law like every Christian has to go out and do this. But the church should look around and see, who is our neighbor who's in the ditch? Who is our neighbor who doesn't know what to do? Who is our neighbor who's afraid? And, Jesus teaches about this too in the Beatitudes. You look at, blessed are the meek, blessed are the downtrodden, like blessed are those who are persecuted. Like, we're supposed to look for those people and find them and then lift them up and put them on our own animal, because heaven forbid we have to, give some of our own money to somebody else. But it is so important for the church to, as this was a stranger, but to actually show compassion to people we don't know. That's what Jesus did. Granted, he knows everybody, but he can even see into their hearts. But he, it's not like he saw the people hungry at the feeding of the 5,000 and went, well, sorry guys, go ahead and walk home. Like, he sees their need and then he does something about it, right?
But then what does he also say to that's a really great illustration, because what does he also say to the disciples in their hesitancy?
Right. You find them something to eat, right?
Yeah, right. I was like, you give them something to eat. And so I think that's a great connection point, David, because that is so true. Like, the Christian church is called to give something to eat to the church. We talk about word and sacraments specifically here, but as we think about in the care for our communities and the love that we have for the unborn, that we seek to bolster what's already there. In many ways, I think God has blessed us. I did see at least one headline that said something along the lines that, Roe is overturned and Republicans aren't ready for it. Now, I don't want to make this a Republican Democrat thing, even though I think you could maybe make some of that case there. We'll just say that specifically, let's change up the headline a little bit. Roe is overturned and Christians aren't ready for it. Not to say that there aren't some Christians in the Democratic Party. Let the commenter be note. But is the Christian church ready for this? I think that they actually are, and perhaps they're gonna. But then it will be the crucible of the moments where we're gonna have to, like you say, probably build more crisis pregnancy centers and do more of what we already have been doing. There are some amazing crisis pregnancy centers out there, unfortunately targeted by some of these protesters violently, breaking windows, spray painting, even torching places. These are the very places that they don't say you can't get an abortion, but they say, we like to give you some options. We like to give you some choices. Where have we heard pro-choice before? Okay, let me think about that. They like to give some choices to these mothers where perhaps the choice has been, one choice, which is not a choice at all. Giving them options, letting them hear what it means to be a mother, what it means to bring a pregnancy to full term, what help and support is out there, both within them and in the community that they provide from the pregnancy center, but also in the resources of the community, which include the church. And they don't push their religion. Many of these places are apolitical. They don't affiliate themselves with a particular church or church body or even religion. And yet, who are the people who are most supporting these institutions? It is the Christian church that needs to continue. And as you said, David, it probably is going to need to be even more. And thinking about this neighbor as the most vulnerable, we shouldn't pass them along the way, as the parable goes, but we should seek to put our money where our mouth is. Talk about those things that we said are the most taboo things to talk about: religion, politics, and money. These are the very things that are actually going to help support mothers. Who Christ is, advocating to our elected representatives to continue to advocate for life and securing maybe even monies for that, but also our own monies, putting them in these pregnancy crisis centers and helping them with reaching out to mothers who are in need. So, religion, politics, and money, it might come with a great deep visceral connotations with it, but at the same time, we need to be active in these things in order to help our greatest neighbor, the unborn. Okay. A lot has been said. A lot has been noted today. I think if I was going to close on something here, David, I want to, I think I said this in another episode that if this would overturn, I would mention one of the ways that you can think through talking to someone about advocating for life. I'm going to do that now. I'm going to be very brief on it. Won't go into a lot of explanation here, and we'll end the show with this. This is called the SLED test. This is our last thing that I want to leave you with today, and it's extremely important and I think very helpful. This is something that has been around for a while. One of the persons who does a really great job of going into this is Scott Klusendorf. He is someone who talks about life and knows this topic inside and out. He's got a great book that I do recommend. It's called The Case for Life. I believe a second edition is just rolling out pretty soon here, if not even while we speak, sort of deal. So Scott Klusendorf, The Case for Life, very winsome book, very helpful. He talks about it from the philosophical point of view. He talks about it from the scientific point of view. And he even talks about it from the theological point of view as well. So bridging all these things of human existence together to make the case for life. And one of the things central to this is people who have the hesitancy. We kind of began our conversation today a little bit on this topic about, how does a Christian understand this? How do they begin to approach this topic? How do they give a faithful witness to others when maybe they might be more likely to be maybe closed-minded, maybe not want to engage in conversation because they just don't know how? The SLED test is a very helpful way of doing this. It's an acronym, SLED. And so I want to go through each of these. Size is the first one. If talking about how we then objectively measure the intrinsic worth of a human being. And this is helpful for when people have all their kind of rabbit trail things, like topics that they bring up in opposition to abortion. The SLED test helps maneuver the question out of the rabbit trails and onto one track, which it has the central question at the center, that is, who are the unborn? And if the unborn are human, then they have intrinsic worth. So this is one of the ways that you can help guide that conversation and steer things back to that central question, the SLED test. So size, S. If value is measured by size, larger people are more human than smaller ones, and generally men become more human than women. So size determines nothing. L, level of development. If value is measured by level of development, embryos and fetuses become to some to some less than human. The logical extreme of this view uncovers the absurdity that a 4-year-old child is a lesser human when compared to a more developed 14-year-old. So you can't base value on their level of development. Sometimes that's the argument that's made. Well, a child or an embryo, a fetus is not much of anything, but because they can't cognitively think in one way or another, or as I can. Well, neither can a 4-year-old compared to a 14-year-old compared to a 41-year-old. E, environment. If value is measured by environment, how does a journey of 8 inches down the birth canal suddenly change the unborn non-human to a born human? Okay, that's an absurdity of environment. Where you are does not establish who you are intrinsically. One of the illustrations they give here when people say, well, they're in the womb opposed to those who are outside of the womb, that's what makes a human. One of the funny illustrations that I've heard is like, an astronaut is out of this world. Are they now like not a human anymore? Like they don't exist in this world. So I guess they're not human anymore. So you can't, environment is not what constitutes a human life. And then the last one, degree of dependency. If value is measured by degree of dependency, at what point is someone truly independent? The subjective nature of dependency reaches beyond a child in the womb, from needing insulin medicine or an inhaler to the very basic needs of food and water. Each comes from outside of an individual, making all people dependents of some degree or another. Think about, sometimes consciousness is labeled here. The fetus is unconscious, and I am conscious. Well, it's like, when you're knocked out or when you fall asleep, do you not become a human anymore? It's like, no, you still are. And when you think more specifically on degree of dependency, we are all dependent on someone to provide our basic needs. So that is the SLED test. It all comes back to the same thing. All these rabbit trails need to find their final path in the question, is the unborn human? And, issues, etc. On our show here today, we're talking about this very topic.
Issues, etc. shares I'm pretty sure Issues Etc. shares a lot of the same thoughts on life.
I'm sure they do too. I don't know why I just said that. I guess I was thinking that the Issues Etc. conference was happening at the same time that this ruling came down. Maybe that's what I was thinking of. I don't know. But I was actually thinking that Scott Klusendorf has been on Issues Etc. And that's actually a great place for you to go if you want to know more deeply on the SLED test and other things here, from making the case for life philosophically, scientifically, and theologically. Scott Klusendorf has episodes that have been recorded with Todd Wilkin on Issues Etc. that are phenomenal, and you should definitely check those out. But what I was trying to say is that with Headlines with the Pastors, this is what we're talking about specifically ourselves as well, that the unborn deserves, as our neighbor in Christ, our attention, care, and support. And so do the mothers who are carrying these children. And, our prayer is that as you have kind of consumed everything that we've talked about today, which has been a wide range of things, talking about the ruling itself and going through those different sections, what truth is and who is ultimately our neighbor. I hope that you have found this beneficial for you to be a faithful witness in God's world to those who might be struggling to answer these very, they seem basic, but very monumental questions of existence, and helping them to understand that God loves them. He died for them. He rose for them, both the born and the unborn, and that he desires all people to be saved in the truth and knowledge of his death and in his death and resurrection. So that's what our prayers are for each of you today. That it has been a great benefit for you to see these things in its totality. To take that extra time in the show today to do that and to be there with you. And we appreciate that you have spent this much time with us today, listening through these things and taking the time to understand them. It's very important and vital for our role as brothers and sisters in Christ. So thank you for joining us today on Headlines with the Pastors. If you like what you've heard and you want to listen to more, consider subscribing to our podcast on whatever platform you use. If you're watching us on YouTube, please give this video a like, subscribe to our channel, and hit that bell notification button to stay up to date on our latest content. You can also visit our website at rubrica.org. That's rubric with an A.org. God's blessings to you and God's blessings to your week.